The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Zara Williams sat beside her grandmother's bed, staring at the medical bill that had just arrived. $500,000. The numbers blurred as tears filled her dark brown eyes. Her grandmother, the woman who had raised her since she was 8 years old, lay unconscious after her third heart surgery. "Miss Williams?" The doctor's voice cut through her despair. "We need to discuss the payment plan." Zara folded the bill with shaking hands. She was 23 years old, working 2 jobs just to pay rent on their tiny apartment. Her savings account had exactly $312. The math was impossible. The situation was hopeless. 3 days later, as she sat in the hospital cafeteria picking at a sandwich she couldn't afford, a woman in an expensive suit approached her table. The woman was tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Zara Williams?" the woman asked. Zara looked up, confused. "Yes. My name is Margaret Holmes. I represent someone who might be able to help with your situation." The woman sat down without being invited. "I understand you need exactly $500,000. Zara's heart stopped. "How do you know that?" "My employer has connections. He's aware of your grandmother's condition and your financial difficulties." Margaret placed a thick envelope on the table. "He has a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" Zara asked, not touching the envelope. "A job. 1 year of employment. The pay is exactly what you need." Margaret's face was unreadable. "But there are conditions." Zara felt like she was drowning. "What conditions?" "You would live in his home. You would be available 24 hours a day. You would sign a contract agreeing to specific terms." Margaret paused. "You would have no contact with the outside world except for weekly visits to see your grandmother." "That sounds like prison," Zara whispered. "It's employment. Well-paid employment." Margaret pushed the envelope closer. "The money would be transferred to the hospital immediately. Your grandmother would receive the best care available." Zara stared at the envelope. Inside was either salvation or a trap she might never escape from. "Who is your employer?" "Someone who values privacy above all else. Someone who has been hurt by the world and chooses to live away from it." Margaret stood up. "You have 24 hours to decide. If you agree, a car will pick you up tomorrow at 6 p.m. "But I don't even know his name." "His name is Adrian Stone. You might have heard of him." Zara had heard of him. Everyone had. Adrian Stone, the tech genius who had created 3 companies worth billions of dollars before he was 30. Then, 3 years ago he had disappeared from public life entirely. The media called him a recluse. Some said he had gone crazy. Others whispered that he was hiding something terrible. Margaret left the envelope on the table and walked away. Zara sat there for an hour staring at it. Finally she opened it. Inside was a contract and a check for $500,000. The check was already signed. The contract was 10 pages long, filled with legal language she barely understood. But the basics were clear. 1 year of her life in exchange for her grandmother's life. No romantic relationships. No personal connections. Complete isolation except for medical visits. At the bottom of the last page there was a handwritten note in elegant script. "I know what it's like to lose the person who matters most. I won't let you experience that pain if I can prevent it." Zara walked back to her grandmother's room. The old woman looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. This was the woman who had taken her in when her parents died. Who had worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. Who had never missed a school play or graduation ceremony. "I'm going to save you, Grandma," Zara whispered, taking the old woman's hand. "Even if it costs me everything." She signed the contract that night. The next evening, as promised, a black car arrived outside her apartment building. The driver was silent as he loaded her single suitcase into the trunk. As the car pulled away from everything she had ever known, Zara watched her neighborhood disappear through the rear window. The drive took 2 hours, leading them far from the city into rolling hills covered with trees. Finally they turned through massive iron gates onto a private road. The mansion that appeared through the darkness was enormous, with dozens of windows glowing like eyes in the night. Zara had made her choice. There was no going back now. As the car stopped in front of the imposing entrance, she realized she was about to meet the man who had bought a year of her life. The man who lived like a ghost in this palace of isolation. The driver opened her door and she stepped out into the cool night air. Above her, the mansion towered like something out of a fairy tale. But fairy tales, Zara knew, didn't always have happy endings. The front door opened before Zara could knock. A woman in her 60s stood there, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and had the look of someone who had spent her life taking care of others. "You must be Zara," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper. Welcome to Stonehaven." Zara stepped inside and her breath caught. The entrance hall was 3 stories tall, with a crystal chandelier that cast rainbows on the marble floor. A grand staircase curved up to the 2nd floor, its banister carved from dark wood that gleamed like liquid. "It's beautiful," Zara whispered. "Mr. Stone has excellent taste," Mrs. Patterson agreed. "Let me show you to your room. You must be tired from the journey." As they walked through the mansion, Zara tried to process everything she saw. Oil paintings covered the walls, each one probably worth more than she had ever made in a year. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was perfect, but there was something sad about the perfection. It felt like a place where no one really lived. "How long have you worked here?" Zara asked as they climbed the stairs. 22 years, Mrs. Patterson replied. "I came here when Mr. Stone was just a young man starting his first company. I've watched him grow into the man he is today." There was something in her voice that made Zara curious. "What's he like?" Mrs. Patterson paused on the landing. "He's a good man who has been through terrible things. He needs kindness, even if he doesn't think he deserves it." They walked down a long hallway lined with doors. Mrs. Patterson stopped at the last one and opened it. "This is your room." The bedroom was larger than Zara's entire apartment had been. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, covered in soft blue fabric that matched the curtains. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking gardens that stretched as far as she could see. "It's too much," Zara said, feeling overwhelmed. "Mr. Stone wants you to be comfortable. You'll find everything you need in the closet and bathroom. Dinner is served at 7, but tonight you should rest. Tomorrow you'll begin your duties." "What exactly are my duties?" Zara asked. Mrs. Patterson's expression grew careful. "Mr. Stone will explain everything. But Zara, there are rules in this house. Important rules." "What kind of rules?" "Mr. Stone doesn't like loud noises. He doesn't receive visitors. He doesn't celebrate holidays or birthdays. And he doesn't like to talk about the past." Mrs. Patterson moved to the door. "The most important rule is that you must never enter the 3rd floor. That part of the house is off limits." "Why?" "Some doors are meant to stay closed, dear. Some rooms hold too much pain." Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." After Mrs. Patterson left, Zara walked around the room, touching the expensive fabrics and admiring the artwork on the walls. Through the French doors she could see gardens illuminated by soft lights. In the distance she glimpsed what looked like a lake reflecting the stars. She unpacked her few belongings, feeling embarrassed by how little she had brought. Her clothes looked shabby hanging in the massive closet next to empty hangers that seemed to be waiting for a wardrobe she didn't own. That night, Zara lay in the enormous bed and stared at the ceiling. The house was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. She thought about her grandmother, hopefully getting better care now that the bills were paid. She thought about the contract she had signed and the year that stretched ahead of her. Most of all, she thought about Adrian Stone. What kind of man lived in such a beautiful prison? What had happened to make him hide from the world? And why had he chosen her, of all people, to share his isolation? The next morning, Zara woke to find a breakfast tray outside her door. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, and coffee that smelled like heaven. There was also a note written in the same elegant handwriting she had seen on the contract. "Please meet me in the library at 10 a.m. Zara dressed carefully in her best dress, which suddenly seemed very plain in this palace of luxury. She found the library after getting lost twice in the maze of hallways. The room was enormous, with books from floor to ceiling and leather chairs positioned near tall windows. At exactly 10 o'clock she heard footsteps. A man entered the library, and Zara's breath caught in her throat. Adrian Stone was nothing like she had expected. He was tall and lean, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and the kind of face that belonged in movies. But his eyes were what captured her attention. They were gray-blue like storm clouds, and filled with a sadness so deep it made her chest ache. "Miss Williams," he said, his voice quiet but commanding. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for helping my grandmother," Zara replied, not sure what else to say. He nodded and moved to stand by the window, keeping distance between them. "I want to be clear about your role here. You are not my employee in the traditional sense. You are my companion." "What does that mean?" "It means you will eat meals with me when I choose to eat with someone. You will sit in the same room when I don't want to be alone. You will listen when I need someone to listen." He turned to look at her. You will help me remember what it's like to have another person nearby. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. You're lonely. I'm isolated by choice. There's a difference. His voice was sharp, like he was correcting a mistake. Don't confuse this arrangement with friendship, Miss Williams. I am paying you to provide a service. Nothing more. What happened to you? The question slipped out before Zara could stop it. Adrian's face went cold. That is not your concern. Your concern is following the terms of our contract. He moved toward the door. Mrs. Patterson will show you the rest of the house. We'll have dinner together tonight at 7. Don't be late. He left her standing in the library, surrounded by thousands of books and the echo of his footsteps. Zara realized she had just met the loneliest man in the world. And for the next year she would be the only person in his life. The first 2 weeks at Stonehaven passed like a strange dream. Zara learned the rhythms of the house, the unspoken rules that governed every moment. Adrian appeared for meals exactly on time, ate in silence, and disappeared back into whatever part of the mansion he spent his days in. He was polite but distant, like she was a piece of furniture he acknowledged but didn't really see. Their conversations, if they could be called that, consisted of him asking if she needed anything and her saying no. She began to wonder if he had forgotten why he had brought her there. He's not always like this, Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon as they arranged flowers in the main hallway. When he was younger, before the accident, he was different. What accident? Zara asked, though she suspected Mrs. Patterson wouldn't answer. The older woman's face grew sad. The one that took everything from him. The one that made him build these walls around his heart. That evening, Zara decided to break the silence. She had been eating dinner across from Adrian for 14 days, watching him push food around his plate while she pretended to have an appetite. The dining room was enormous, with a table that could seat 20 people, but they sat at opposite ends like strangers in a restaurant. I visited my grandmother yesterday, Zara said, breaking the quiet. Adrian looked up from his plate, surprised. How is she? Better. The doctors say she's responding well to the new treatment. Zara took a breath. She wanted me to thank you. That's not necessary. It is to her. And to me. Zara set down her fork. She raised me after my parents died. She's the only family I have left. Adrian's expression flickered, like she had touched something deep inside him. How old were you when you lost them? A car accident. The silence that followed was different from their usual quiet. It was heavy with understanding. Adrian's hands stilled on his silverware, and for a moment, he looked like he might say something real. Then the walls came back up. I'm sorry for your loss, he said formally. Thank you. Zara leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? You can ask. I may not answer. Why did you choose me? Margaret said you knew about my situation, but there must be thousands of people who need help. Why me? Adrian was quiet for so long that Zara thought he wouldn't respond. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you understand loss. Because you know what it's like to have someone you love hanging between life and death. Is that why you live like this? Because you lost someone? Adrian stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This conversation is over. He left the dining room, and Zara sat alone surrounded by the echo of his footsteps. But something had changed. For just a moment she had seen past his walls to the pain underneath. The next day, Adrian didn't appear for breakfast or lunch. Mrs. Patterson brought Zara her meals on a tray, her face worried. He gets like this sometimes, the housekeeper explained. When memories get too close to the surface, he shuts down completely. Where does he go? To his office on the second floor. Sometimes he doesn't come out for days. Mrs. Patterson sighed. He's punishing himself again. For what? For being alive when they're not. That afternoon, Zara found herself standing outside a door she had never seen opened. A brass nameplate read, A. Stone Private Office. She could hear music coming from inside, something classical and heartbreakingly sad. She knocked softly. The music stopped, but no one came to the door. Adrian, she called. I know you're in there. Go away, Miss Williams. No. The word surprised her with its firmness. Part of my job is being your companion. That means I don't go away when things get difficult. She heard footsteps and then the door opened. Adrian stood there, and Zara's heart clenched at the sight of him. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes were red-rimmed like he hadn't slept. You don't understand, he said. Then help me understand. He stared at her for a long moment and she saw him fighting some internal battle. Finally he stepped aside and let her enter. The office was nothing like the rest of the house. Papers were scattered everywhere, and multiple computer screens showed charts and graphs. But what caught Zara's attention were the photographs covering one entire wall. Pictures of Adrian with a beautiful woman with long dark hair and warm brown eyes. Pictures of them with a little girl who had her mother's smile and her father's eyes. Pictures of a family that had been happy and whole. Their names were Sarah and Emma, Adrian said quietly. My wife and daughter. Zara felt tears prick her eyes. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old. What happened to them? I killed them. The words came out flat and emotionless, like he had said them so many times they had lost all meaning. That's not true. I was driving. It was raining. I was going too fast because I was late for Emma's dance recital. His voice cracked. I lost control of the car. Sarah died instantly. Emma lived for 3 days in the hospital before. He couldn't finish the sentence. Zara moved closer to him, her heart breaking for this man who carried such terrible guilt. It was an accident, she said softly. It was my fault. I was supposed to protect them. I was supposed to keep them safe. Adrian's voice was raw with pain. Instead, I destroyed everything I loved. For the first time since she had arrived at Stonehaven, Zara saw Adrian Stone not as a mysterious billionaire, but as a man drowning in grief. And she realized that her job wasn't just to be his companion. It was to help him remember how to live again. After that night in Adrian's office, something shifted between them. The walls were still there, but they had cracks now. Small moments when Adrian forgot to be distant, when he let pieces of his real self show through. It started with breakfast. Instead of eating alone in her room, Zara began joining Adrian in the small breakfast nook off the kitchen. The room was nothing like the formal dining room, with its windows overlooking the garden and simple wooden table that felt more like home. The roses are blooming, Zara mentioned one morning, nodding toward the garden. Adrian glanced up from his coffee. Sarah planted those. She said the red ones reminded her of her grandmother's garden in Georgia. It was the first time he had mentioned his wife without pain twisting his features. Zara smiled. She had good taste. They're beautiful. She had perfect taste in everything. Adrian's voice was soft. Except maybe in husbands. I don't think so, Zara said quietly. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. Adrian looked at her with surprise, like he hadn't expected her to defend him against himself. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, both pretending not to notice that something important had just happened. Later that week, Zara was in the library reading when Adrian appeared in the doorway. She had grown used to the way he moved through the house like a ghost, appearing and disappearing without warning. What are you reading? He asked. Zara held up the book. Pride and Prejudice. I found it on the shelf. Sarah's favorite book. She read it at least once a year. Adrian entered the room and sat in the chair across from her. She used to say that Elizabeth Bennet was the perfect woman because she never let anyone make her feel small. Smart woman, Zara said. In the book and in life. Yes, she was. Adrian was quiet for a moment. What about you? Do you let people make you feel small? The question caught Zara off guard. Sometimes. When I was growing up, kids at school used to make fun of my clothes, the way I talked. I learned to make myself invisible. You're not invisible now. No, Zara agreed. It's hard to be invisible in a place like this. Adrian almost smiled. Almost. Mrs. Patterson says you've been helping her in the garden. I hope that's okay. I needed something to do with my hands. Of course it's okay. This is your home now for the next 10 months anyway. Adrian paused. What do you miss most about your old life? Honestly? The noise. Zara laughed. My apartment was above a busy street. There were always sirens, people talking, music playing. Here, it's so quiet I can hear my own thoughts. Is that bad? Sometimes. Quiet thoughts can be dangerous. Zara looked at him directly. What about you? What do you miss most? Adrian was silent for so long that Zara thought he wouldn't answer. Finally he spoke. Laughter. This house used to be full of laughter. That evening Mrs. Patterson made her famous chocolate chip cookies, and the kitchen filled with warmth and the smell of vanilla. Zara found herself helping, measuring flour and stirring batter while the older woman shared stories about her grandchildren. You should take some to Mr. Stone, Mrs. Patterson suggested when the cookies came out of the oven. He used to love these when he was younger. Zara found Adrian in his office, staring at his computer screen but not really seeing it. She knocked on the open door. I brought you something, she said, holding up a plate of warm cookies. Adrian turned, and for a split second, his face lit up like a child's. Then he caught himself. Thank you, but I don't really eat sweets anymore. When did you stop? When I stopped deserving them. Zara set the plate on his desk and sat down in the chair across from him. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's realistic. It's ridiculous. Zara picked up a cookie and took a bite. These are amazing. Mrs. Patterson says they were your favorite. They were Emma's favorite too. She used to steal them when she thought no one was looking. Adrian's voice grew soft. She'd get chocolate all over her face and deny she'd eaten any. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was perfect. They both were. Adrian looked at the cookies like they might bite him. I don't deserve to enjoy things they'll never taste again. Do you think that's what they would want? For you to punish yourself forever? Adrian's face hardened. It doesn't matter what they would want. They're gone. But you're not. Zara leaned forward. You're still here, Adrian. That has to mean something. She left the cookies on his desk and went to her room. Later that night, when she passed his office on her way to get a glass of water, she saw the empty plate. All the cookies were gone. It was a small victory, but it felt like the beginning of something important. Adrian Stone was starting to remember that he was still alive. And maybe, just maybe, that being alive wasn't something he needed to apologize for. The next morning at breakfast, Adrian did something he had never done before. He asked Zara a question that had nothing to do with her needs or the house rules. Do you believe in second chances? He asked. Zara looked up from her eggs, surprised. I believe we get as many chances as we're brave enough to take. Adrian nodded slowly, like he was considering her words. Even for people who have done terrible things? Especially for them. Zara met his eyes. The people who need second chances the most are usually the ones who think they deserve them the least. For the first time since she had arrived at Stonehaven, Adrian Stone smiled. It was small and uncertain, like he had forgotten how. But it was real, and it changed everything. 3 weeks after the cookie incident, as Zara had started thinking of it, Adrian began joining her for walks around the estate. At first, they walked in silence, but gradually he started pointing out different plants and sharing memories attached to them. Sarah designed all of this, he said one afternoon as they stood beside a fountain surrounded by white roses. She had this vision of creating different rooms in the garden, each with its own personality. She was an artist, Zara observed, admiring the way the flowers were arranged in perfect harmony. Among other things. She was a pediatric nurse, actually. She worked at the children's hospital downtown. Adrian's voice grew warm with pride. She always said she wanted to heal the world, one child at a time. They walked toward what Sarah had called the secret garden, a hidden alcove surrounded by tall hedges where a wooden swing hung from the branch of an old oak tree. Emma's favorite spot, Adrian said, touching the swing gently. She'd spend hours here, making up stories about fairy princesses and brave knights. Zara could picture it, a little girl with dark curls and her father's gray eyes, swinging high toward the sky while her imagination ran wild. Tell me about her. Adrian sat on a stone bench nearby, his expression distant. She was 5 years old, but she had the vocabulary of a 10-year-old. Sarah used to read to her every night, and Emma would memorize entire books. He smiled at the memory. She wanted to be a veterinarian and a princess and an astronaut, all at the same time. Sounds like she knew what she wanted. She knew she wanted everything. Adrian's smile faded. She should have had the chance to try it all. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the birds singing in the trees. Finally, Zara asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. What were you like before? Before the accident? Adrian considered the question seriously. Different. I was louder, I suppose. I loved having people around. This house was always full of friends and colleagues. Sarah used to tease me about being unable to sit still. What changed you the most? The silence. Adrian's voice was barely above a whisper. After the funeral, everyone went home and suddenly the house was so quiet. I realized I had never been alone before, not really. I'd gone from my parents' house to college dorms to sharing a life with Sarah. I didn't know how to be by myself. So you decided to stay that way? I decided I deserved it. Adrian stood up abruptly. We should head back. Mrs. Patterson will be worried. That evening, Mrs. Patterson pulled Zara aside in the kitchen. He's been different lately, the housekeeper said with a knowing smile. More like his old self. How so? He's been eating better. He actually asked me to make his favorite dinner tomorrow night. And I heard him humming yesterday. I haven't heard that in 3 years. Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest. He's just healing, I think. Little by little. You're good for him, dear. You're helping him remember who he used to be. I'm not doing anything special. You're being yourself. That's exactly what he needs. Mrs. Patterson patted Zara's hand. But be careful, dear. His heart has been broken for so long, he's forgotten how to protect it. The next morning, Zara found Adrian in the library earlier than usual, standing in front of a shelf she had never seen him approach before. In his hands was a photo album. I haven't looked at these in 2 years, he said without turning around. Would you like to be alone? No. He turned to face her. Would you like to see them? Sarah and Emma, really see them, not just the pictures on my office wall. Zara's heart skipped. I'd be honored. They sat together on the leather sofa and Adrian opened the album. The first page showed a much younger Adrian with his arm around a beautiful woman in a wedding dress. Both of them were laughing, their faces glowing with happiness. Our wedding day, Adrian said. Best day of my life until Emma was born. He turned the page, revealing pictures of Sarah pregnant, her hand resting on her growing belly while Adrian kissed her cheek. Then came photos of a tiny baby with dark hair and serious eyes. She was so small, Zara whispered. But loud. She had these powerful lungs from day one. Adrian's voice was filled with love. Sarah used to joke that Emma was protesting being born because she wasn't ready to leave her warm, cozy home. Page after page revealed a family deeply in love. Emma taking her first steps while her parents cheered. Sarah teaching Emma to plant flowers in the garden. Adrian reading bedtime stories while Emma fell asleep on his lap. You were happy, Zara said. Completely. I thought it would last forever. Adrian closed the album carefully. I used to believe that if you were a good person, if you worked hard and loved the people in your life, nothing truly bad would happen to you. And now I know that happiness is temporary. That love makes you vulnerable. That the more you have to lose, the more likely you are to lose it. Zara turned to face him fully. Do you regret loving them? Never. The answer came immediately. But I regret thinking I deserved to keep them. Adrian, what happened to your family was a tragedy. But it wasn't punishment. It wasn't karma. It was just a terrible accident. How can you be so sure? Because if the universe worked that way, if bad things only happened to people who deserve them, then good people like your wife and daughter would never die. And we both know that's not how life works. Adrian stared at her, and Zara saw something shift in his expression. For the first time, he looked like he was considering the possibility that she might be right. I've been so angry, he admitted quietly. At God, at fate, at myself. Mostly at myself. Anger is easier than grief sometimes. Is it obvious? Only to someone who understands. Zara took a deep breath. I was angry too when my parents died. Angry at them for leaving me, angry at God for taking them, angry at other kids for having normal families. The anger felt powerful like armor. What changed? My grandmother. She told me that anger was just love with nowhere to go. She said I had to find a way to love my parents even though they were gone, or the anger would eat me alive. Adrian was quiet for a long time, processing her words. Finally he spoke. I don't know how to love them without them here. Maybe that's something we can figure out together. He looked at her with surprise, like he had forgotten that he wasn't alone anymore. If you want. I'm not going anywhere for the next 9 months. For the second time since she had known him, Adrian Stone smiled. And this time it reached his eyes. The evening started like any other. Adrian and Zara had dinner together, talking about books and sharing stories from their childhoods. The conversation flowed easily now, without the careful distance that had marked their first weeks together. I've been thinking about what you said, Adrian told her as they walked to the library after dinner. About learning to love them even though they're gone. And I think I'm ready to try. They had just settled into their usual chairs when the lights went out. The entire house plunged into darkness so complete that Zara couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. Power outage, Adrian said calmly. Happens sometimes during storms. Outside, Zara could hear wind rattling the windows and rain beginning to fall. She hadn't realized the storm was coming. Are you okay? Adrian's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. Yes, just surprised. Zara tried to keep the nervousness out of her voice. She had never liked complete darkness, not since the night her parents died in that car accident during a thunderstorm. Stay where you are. I'll find some candles. She heard Adrian moving carefully through the room, his footsteps confident despite the darkness. There should be some in the cabinet by the window. A few minutes later, warm candlelight flickered to life, casting dancing shadows on the library walls. Adrian had found several candles and was lighting them one by one. In the golden glow, his face looked softer, younger somehow. Better? He asked, noticing her relief. Much better. Thank you. Adrian sat back down, but this time he chose the chair closer to hers instead of across the room. You don't like the dark. It wasn't a question. Somehow he had noticed her fear. Not particularly. Bad memories. The night your parents died? Zara nodded. It was raining just like tonight. The power had gone out at our house and my parents were driving home from my school play. I was waiting for them with a babysitter, watching the storm through the window. She wrapped her arms around herself. They never made it home. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. I should have thought about how the storm might affect you. It's not your fault. You can't control the weather. No, but I could have warned you it was coming. I've been watching the weather reports all day. Adrian leaned forward. The storm should pass in a few hours. Until then, we're stuck with candlelight. I don't mind. It's actually kind of nice. Peaceful. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain against the windows. The candlelight made everything feel intimate, like they were sharing secrets in a warm cave while the world raged outside. Can I ask you something? Zara said eventually. Always. What were you like as a child? Before you became successful, before you met Sarah? Who was Adrian Stone when he was just a little boy? Adrian smiled at the question. Curious about everything. I used to take apart every electronic device in the house, much to my mother's frustration. I wanted to know how things worked, why they worked, what would happen if I changed them. And did you put them back together? Sometimes. My father learned to hide the important things when I was around. Adrian's voice grew warm with memory. I was also incredibly stubborn. If I decided I wanted something, I would work toward it with single-minded determination until I got it. That explains how you built your companies. My mother used to say I was like a dog with a bone. I wouldn't let go of an idea until I had completely explored every possibility. Adrian paused. Sarah used to say the same thing actually. She said it was both my greatest strength and my most annoying quality. What did she mean? Well, the strength part is obvious. But the annoying part. Adrian laughed, a real laugh that filled the room with warmth. When we were dating, I decided I wanted to learn to cook her favorite meal. I spent 3 weeks practicing the same dish over and over again, calling her every night to ask questions about ingredients and technique. She finally had to tell me to stop because I was driving her crazy. Did you ever master the dish? Perfectly. And then I never cooked it again because I had achieved my goal. Adrian shook his head. She was right. It was annoying. But sweet. Obsessive but sweet. That's a generous way to put it. The storm outside was getting stronger, and suddenly there was a loud crack of thunder that made both of them jump. Zara couldn't help the small gasp that escaped her lips. It's okay, Adrian said immediately. We're safe in here. I know. Just the sound. It reminds me. Without thinking, Adrian reached over and took her hand. His touch was warm and steady, grounding her in the present moment instead of the scary memories from her past. Tell me about a good storm, he said. A time when rain made you happy instead of afraid. Zara thought for a moment. When I was 12, my grandmother and I got caught in a summer storm while we were walking home from the grocery store. Instead of running for cover, she started dancing in the rain. Right there on the sidewalk with people watching and cars driving by. Did you join her? Eventually. She kept calling to me, come on Zara. The rain won't hurt you. It's just water celebrating. She was so joyful, so free. I couldn't resist. Zara smiled at the memory. We danced until we were soaked through, laughing and spinning in circles. When we got home, we had to change all our clothes, but it was worth it. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She is. She taught me that most things we're afraid of can't actually hurt us. It's the fear itself that causes the pain. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. Is that what you're trying to teach me? The question hung between them in the candlelit room. Zara realized that somewhere along the way, their relationship had shifted from employer and employee to something deeper. They had become friends, confidants, two people helping each other heal from old wounds. I'm not trying to teach you anything, she said honestly. I'm just trying to be here with you. You are here. More than anyone has been in 3 years. Another crack of thunder shook the house, but this time Zara didn't flinch. Adrian's hand in hers made her feel safe, protected from the storm outside and the storms inside her own heart. Adrian, she said softly. Yes. Thank you. For bringing me here, for trusting me with your story, for letting me be part of your life. Thank you for staying. For not running away when you saw how broken I was. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. In the flickering candlelight, Adrian looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was wonder mixed with something that might have been hope. Zara, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Yes. I think I'm starting to remember who I used to be. The power came back on an hour later, flooding the library with electric light. But neither of them moved to blow out the candles. Some moments were too precious to end, even when the storm had passed. The morning after the storm, everything felt different. Zara woke up thinking about the way Adrian had held her hand, the way he had looked at her by candlelight. She tried to tell herself it didn't mean anything, that he was just being kind to someone who was afraid of the dark. But when she came down for breakfast and saw him waiting for her with a cup of coffee prepared exactly the way she liked it, her heart did something complicated in her chest. Good morning, he said, and his smile was soft and real. Good morning. She accepted the coffee, trying not to notice how her fingers brushed against his. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. Adrian pulled out her chair for her, a gesture that was both old-fashioned and intimate. The storm cleared the air. Everything feels fresh today. They ate breakfast together, talking about small things, the flowers in the garden, a book Zara was reading, plans for the day. But underneath the ordinary conversation was a current of something electric, an awareness of each other that hadn't been there before. I thought we might walk down to the lake today, Adrian suggested. The storm probably left some interesting debris on the shore. I'd like that. After breakfast, they walked through the gardens toward the lake Zara had glimpsed from her bedroom window. Up close, it was even more beautiful, a perfect mirror of water surrounded by weeping willows and wild flowers. Sarah and I used to have picnics here, Adrian said as they walked along the shore. Emma learned to skip stones right over there. For the first time, he mentioned his family without the sharp edge of pain in his voice. The grief was still there, but it was softer now, like a scar that had finally healed enough to touch. It's peaceful, Zara said, watching the water ripple in the breeze. I haven't been down here in 2 years. I was afraid it would hurt too much. But it doesn't? Adrian considered the question. It hurts, but it's a different kind of hurt. Like remembering something beautiful instead of just mourning something lost. They found a fallen log to sit on, close enough to the water to hear the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Adrian picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the surface, 1, 2, 3 for jumps before it sank. Emma's record was 7, he said with pride. She was obviously going to be a professional stone skipper. Among other things. Adrian's voice was warm with memory. She had so many dreams, so many plans. She was going to be everything. They sat in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Adrian spoke again. Zara, can I tell you something? Of course. Last night, sitting with you in the candlelight was the first time in 3 years that I felt present. Like I was actually living my life instead of just surviving it. Zara's heart began to beat faster. Adrian? I know what our contract says. I know the rules we agreed to follow. But I need you to know that you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that? Hope. The word hung between them like a bridge neither of them was sure they should cross. Zara knew she should say something professional, something that would remind them both of the boundaries they had agreed to maintain. Instead, she found herself speaking from her heart. You've given me something too, she said quietly. What? A reason to believe that broken things can be repaired. That people can heal from even the worst kind of pain. Adrian turned to face her fully, and Zara saw her own feelings reflected in his eyes. The careful distance they had maintained was crumbling, replaced by something real and dangerous and beautiful. We shouldn't, Adrian said, but he didn't move away. I know. The contract specifically forbids personal relationships. I know. You could lose everything. The money for your grandmother, your place here. I know. Zara met his gaze steadily. But some things are worth the risk. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. He leaned closer, his hand reaching up to touch her face. Then at the last second he pulled back. We can't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Why not? Because I can't promise you anything. Because I'm still learning how to live again. Because you deserve better than someone who's held together with grief and good intentions. Zara felt her heart break a little at his words. Don't you think I should be the one to decide what I deserve? Not when it comes to this. Not when the stakes are so high. Adrian stood up abruptly and walked to the water's edge, putting distance between them. Zara watched him struggle with feelings he didn't want to have, fighting a battle between his heart and his fear. What if we tried? She asked. What if we took it slow, figured it out as we went along? And when you leave? When your year is up and you go back to your real life? Adrian's voice was rough with pain. I can't lose someone else I care about, Zara. I won't survive it a second time. Who says I'm leaving? The question seemed to surprise him. He turned back to look at her, hope and fear warring in his expression. Your contract ends in 8 months. You'll be free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. What if what I want is to stay? You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? Zara stood up and walked over to him. Adrian, I came here to help my grandmother. But staying here, getting to know you, seeing you heal and grow, that's become important to me too. You've become important to me. Zara? I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm not asking for promises you can't keep. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that what's happening between us is worth exploring. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, and she could see him weighing her words against his fears. Finally, he reached out and took her hand. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too. If we do this, if we try, we have to be honest with each other. About everything. Our feelings, our fears, our expectations. I can do that. And we take it slow. No rushing, no pressure. Agreed. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. And if at any point you want to leave, if you change your mind, you can go. No questions asked, no guilt, no consequences. The same goes for you. Deal? He lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles softly, a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. So what happens now? Zara asked. Now we see if two broken people can help each other become whole again. As they walked back to the house together, hands intertwined, Zara felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. It was scary and uncertain and full of possibilities she had never imagined. Behind them, the lake reflected the sky like a mirror, peaceful and perfect and full of promise. For the next 2 weeks, Zara and Adrian existed in a bubble of careful happiness. They took longer walks together, shared more intimate conversations, and slowly began to explore the connection growing between them. Adrian was a gentleman, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but his touches became more frequent, a hand on her back as they walked, fingers brushing as they passed books between them, stolen moments of eye contact that lasted just a beat too long. Zara felt herself falling for him completely, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. She had never experienced anything like what she felt with Adrian, the way her heart raced when he smiled, the way his laugh could light up her entire day, the way she felt safe and cherished in his presence. But on a Tuesday afternoon in late spring, her perfect bubble shattered. She was in Adrian's office helping him organize some files, when she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. As she bent to pick them up, a folder fell open, revealing documents she wasn't supposed to see. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Legal papers, background checks, financial records. Then she saw her own name at the top of one of the documents, and her blood ran cold. It was a complete dossier on her life. Her birth certificate, school records, employment history, medical records, even photographs of her with her grandmother. At the bottom of the file was a psychological profile that made her stomach turn. Subject shows strong caretaking instincts and loyalty patterns consistent with target requirements. Physical resemblance to previous subject is notable and likely to produce desired emotional response. Recommend proceeding with contact. Previous subject. Physical resemblance. Zara's hands shook as she read the words again, trying to make sense of them. Then she saw another photograph in the file and everything became horribly clear. It was a picture of Sarah, Adrian's late wife. And she looked exactly like Zara. The same dark hair, the same brown eyes, the same heart-shaped face. They could have been sisters or twins separated at birth. The resemblance was so striking that Zara understood immediately why Adrian had chosen her, why he had sought her out specifically. She wasn't his companion. She wasn't someone he was falling in love with. She was a replacement, a substitute for the woman he had lost. Zara? Adrian's voice came from the doorway. What are you doing? She turned to face him, the file still in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Is this why you brought me here? Because I look like her? Adrian's face went white. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Zara's voice was shaking with hurt and anger. You hired me because I'm your dead wife's doppelganger. You wanted someone who would remind you of her, who would make you feel like she was still here. It's not that simple. Isn't it? Zara threw the file on his desk, papers scattering everywhere. All those conversations about healing, about moving forward, about learning to live again, was any of it real? Or was I just playing a part in some sick fantasy where you get to pretend Sarah never died? Please let me explain. Explain what? That everything I felt, everything I thought was happening between us, was just you projecting your feelings for another woman onto me? Zara wiped her eyes angrily. I'm not her, Adrian. I'm not Sarah. I'm my own person with my own thoughts and feelings and dreams. I know that. Do you? Because this file suggests otherwise. It suggests you picked me like I was an actress auditioning for a role. Zara's voice broke. How could you do this to me? How could you make me care about you when I was never really me you were seeing? Adrian stepped into the room, his hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. Zara, please. You're right, the resemblance is why I first noticed you. But that's not why I brought you here, and it's certainly not why Why you what? Why you made me think you might actually care about me. I do care about you. More than I thought possible. You care about your memories of her. I'm just a convenient way to keep those memories alive. That's not true. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you mention that I look exactly like your dead wife? Don't you think that was something I had a right to know? Adrian was quiet, and his silence was answer enough. You didn't tell me because you knew I would leave. You knew I would see this for what it really is, a rich man's twisted way of avoiding grief by hiring a replacement wife. I never asked you to replace her. You didn't have to ask. You just let me fall in love with you while knowing that I was never really the one you wanted. Zara moved toward the door. I was so stupid. I actually thought this was real. It is real. No, it's not. Real love doesn't start with deception. Real love doesn't require me to look like someone else. Zara, wait. She stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. I need to think. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. Please don't leave. What? Afraid you'll have to find another Sarah look-alike? She left him standing in his office surrounded by scattered papers and broken dreams. In her room, she sat on the bed and cried until she had no tears left. Everything she had felt over the past months felt tainted now, poisoned by the knowledge that she had been chosen for her face rather than her heart. The worst part was that she still loved him. Even knowing the truth, even feeling betrayed and used, she couldn't turn off her feelings like a switch. She loved Adrian Stone, but she would never know if he loved her back or if he was just in love with her resemblance to a ghost. That evening, Mrs. Patterson knocked on her door. Dear, you missed dinner. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson. Just tired. Mr. Stone asked me to check on you. He seems very worried. I'm sure he is. The housekeeper was quiet for a moment. May I come in, dear? Zara opened the door reluctantly. Mrs. Patterson took one look at her red-rimmed eyes and pulled her into a motherly hug. Oh, sweetheart. You found out about the resemblance. You knew. I've known since the first day you arrived. The similarity is quite striking. Mrs. Patterson guided Zara to sit on the bed. But I also know something else. What? I know that man downstairs is falling apart because he thinks he's lost you. And I know the reason isn't because you look like someone else. How can you be sure? Because I watched him with Sarah for years, dear. I know how he loved her. And I've been watching him with you for months. It's different. Different how? With Sarah, he was young and carefree and full of dreams about the future. His love for her was joyful and confident. With you, his love is deeper, more careful. It's the love of a man who knows how precious and fragile happiness can be. Zara wanted to believe her, but the betrayal still cut deep. He lied to me, Mrs. Patterson. He let me think he chose me for who I am, not what I look like. And maybe that was wrong. But dear, do you really think a man would go through all this trouble, would open his heart again after such devastating loss, just for a pretty face? I don't know what to think anymore. Then talk to him. Let him explain. You owe yourself that much. After Mrs. Patterson left, Zara sat alone in her room, torn between her love for Adrian and her hurt over his deception. She had a choice to make. Run away from the pain or stay and fight for something that might be worth saving. Outside her window, the gardens that Sarah had designed bloomed in the moonlight, beautiful and alive and full of hope. Tomorrow she would decide what kind of ending their story would have. Zara didn't sleep that night. She paced her room, replaying every conversation she'd had with Adrian, looking for clues she had missed. Had his feelings for her ever been real, or was she just a ghost he had been learning to love all over again? By morning, she had made her decision. She wouldn't run away without giving him a chance to explain. She deserved the truth, all of it, and he deserved a chance to tell his side of the story. She found Adrian in the garden, sitting on the bench where they had shared so many conversations. He looked like he hadn't slept either, his hair messy and his clothes wrinkled. When he saw her approaching, hope and fear warred across his features. You came, he said softly. I need answers, Zara replied, sitting on the opposite end of the bench, keeping distance between them. Ask me anything. Did you bring me here because I look like Sarah? Adrian was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. The resemblance is why I first noticed your situation. When Margaret showed me your photograph along with your grandmother's medical records, I was stunned by how much you looked like her. So yes, you brought me here because of my face. I brought you here because I thought being around someone who reminded me of Sarah might help me feel close to her again. I thought it might ease the loneliness. Adrian's voice was raw with honesty. It was selfish and wrong, and I'm sorry. When did that change? When did you start seeing me instead of her? The first morning at breakfast when you talked about the roses in the garden. Sarah would have complimented the flowers, but you talked about the person who planted them. You saw her heart in the garden, not just the beauty. That's when I realized you were nothing like her, despite how you looked. Zara felt some of the tightness in her chest ease, but she wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Why didn't you tell me then? Why did you let me think you chose me for who I was? Because I was falling in love with you, and I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you would leave. Adrian turned to face her fully. I was a coward, Zara. I was so afraid of losing someone else I cared about that I convinced myself the deception was justified. You didn't think I deserved to know the truth about why I was there? You deserved everything I didn't give you. Honesty, respect, the choice to make an informed decision about whether you wanted to stay. Adrian's voice cracked. I was so desperate not to be alone that I made choices that hurt you. That's unforgivable. Zara studied his face, looking for any sign that he was still lying to her. All she saw was pain and regret and a love so deep it took her breath away. Tell me about Sarah, she said quietly. Tell me how you loved her and how loving me is different. Adrian was surprised by the request, but he answered honestly. Sarah was my first love, my partner in building a life I thought would last forever. Loving her was easy and natural and full of dreams about the future. We were young and optimistic and believed we could conquer anything together. And me? Loving you is harder. More complicated. It's the love of someone who has lost everything and found something worth risking his heart for again. Adrian's voice grew soft. With Sarah, I loved without fear because I didn't know how much it would hurt to lose someone. With you, I loved despite the fear because you're worth the risk of being hurt again. How do I know you're seeing me and not just a version of her? Because Sarah never challenged me the way you do. She never pushed me to face my grief or question my choices. She loved me as I was, but you loved me enough to want me to be better. Adrian reached out tentatively, stopping just short of touching her hand. Sarah was my past, Zara. You're my future if you'll have me. Zara felt tears prick her eyes. I want to believe you. Then believe me. Or better yet, let me prove it to you. How? Adrian stood up and held out his hand. Come with me. He led her back to the house, up the stairs to the second floor, then up another flight of stairs she had never climbed. They were going to the third floor, the forbidden area Mrs. Patterson had warned her about on her first day. Adrian, I'm not supposed to be up here. I'm changing the rules. He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hallway. This is Sarah and Emma's room. I haven't opened this door in 3 years. With shaking hands, Adrian unlocked the door and pushed it open. Inside was a room frozen in time, a woman's clothes still hanging in the closet, a child's toys scattered on the floor, family photos covering every surface. This is where I've been keeping them, Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. Preserved exactly as they left it, like a shrine to the past. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm ready to let it go. Not the memories, not the love, but the shrine. The desperate need to keep everything exactly as it was. Adrian walked to the center of the room. I want to pack these things away respectfully, donate what can help other people, and turn this space into something new. What would you make it into? I don't know yet. Maybe a library, maybe an art studio, maybe a nursery someday. Adrian looked at her meaningfully. I want to make it a room for the future instead of a monument to the past. Zara felt her heart begin to heal. That's a big step. I can't do it alone. Will you help me? The question was about more than packing boxes. He was asking her to help him move forward, to build a new life together, to choose hope over fear. Yes, she said simply. They spent the rest of the day carefully packing Sarah and Emma's belongings. Adrian told stories about different items, a scarf Sarah had worn on their first date, Emma's favorite stuffed animal, books they had read together as a family. But instead of clinging to the objects, he was learning to let them go while keeping the love. I want to donate Emma's toys to the children's hospital where Sarah worked, he said, placing a doll gently in a box. She would like that. She would be proud of you, Zara said. For healing, for moving forward, for opening your heart again. Do you really think so? I know so. Any woman who loved you would want you to be happy. As the sun set, they finished packing the last box. The room was empty now, ready for whatever future they would build together. Zara, Adrian said, taking her hands in his. I love you. Not because you look like someone else, not because you remind me of the past, but because you're you. Because you're brave and kind and strong enough to love a broken man. Because you make me want to be better than I am. I love you too, she whispered. Even when I was angry, even when I felt betrayed, I couldn't stop loving you. Can you forgive me for not telling you the truth from the beginning? I forgive you. But Adrian, if we're going to do this, if we're going to be together, we have to promise to be honest with each other. Always. Always, he agreed. He kissed her then, soft and tender and full of promise. It was their first real kiss, the beginning of their real relationship, built on truth instead of deception. When they broke apart, Zara smiled up at him. So what happens now? With the contract, I mean. I'm releasing you from it. You're free to go or stay, whatever makes you happy. And if I stay? Then we figure out this thing between us. We take it slow, we build something real, and we see where it leads. I'd like that. Even though I'm still figuring out how to live again? Especially because of that. I don't want someone who's perfect, Adrian. I want someone who's real, who's been through pain and come out the other side stronger and kinder. I want you. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, Zara Williams. More than I ever thought possible. I love you too. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Zara could hear cars pulling up the driveway. Our guests are arriving, she said. Ready to face the world together? With you? I'm ready for anything. They walked downstairs hand in hand to greet their friends. As Adrian opened the front door to welcome his first visitors in 3 years, Zara marveled at how much had changed. The man who had once hidden from the world was now ready to invite it back into his life. The evening was a success. Adrian was rusty at first, uncertain in conversations that had once come naturally to him. But with Zara by his side, encouraging him with smiles and gentle touches, he gradually relaxed into the man he used to be: charming, intelligent, genuinely interested in other people's lives. You did it, Zara told him later as they said goodbye to the last guests. We did it, Adrian corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a tray of tea, beaming with pride. It was wonderful to see this house full of life again. Sarah and Emma would be so happy. Yes, Adrian agreed, his voice peaceful. They would. That night, as Zara got ready for bed, she looked at herself in the mirror. She saw her own face looking back, not Sarah's, not a ghost from the past, but herself. Zara Williams, a woman who had found love in the most unexpected place with a man who had taught her that broken hearts could heal and that second chances were always possible. Adrian knocked on her door, then entered carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Thought you might want some, he said, settling beside her on the bed. Perfect. Thank you. They sat together in comfortable silence, sipping their drinks and processing the evening. Finally, Adrian spoke. Zara, I need to ask you something important. What? Your grandmother is doing well now. The treatments worked, she's healthy and strong. You could go back to your old life if you wanted to. You could start fresh anywhere you choose. Adrian set down his cup and took her hands. Why are you staying? Really staying, I mean. Not just for tonight or this month, but for the future we're building together. Zara considered the question seriously. It was true that she had options now. Adrian had been generous beyond the terms of their original contract, ensuring she had enough money to start over anywhere she wanted. Her grandmother was healthy and well cared for. She was free to leave Stonehaven and build any life she could imagine. Do you remember what you told me that first day in the library? She asked. Which part? You said your job was to help you remember what it's like to have another person nearby. To help you not be alone. Yes. Well, it turns out I needed the same thing. I've been alone most of my life, Adrian. Not physically but emotionally. I've never had someone who truly saw me, who understood me, who made me feel like I was exactly where I belonged. Zara squeezed his hands. I'm staying because you're my home. Because loving you and being loved by you has made me more myself than I've ever been. Even though our story started with deception? Our story started with 2 people who were afraid to hope for happiness. The deception was just a detour. It taught us that real love has to be built on truth. Adrian was quiet for a moment, processing her words. I keep waiting for you to realize you could do better. Better than a man who loves me enough to face his worst fears? Better than someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to grow and holds me when I'm scared? Zara shook her head. There is no better, Adrian. There's just you, and that's more than enough. What do you want our future to look like? I want to paint in the studio upstairs and help you run your foundation. I want to have dinner parties and travel together and maybe, someday, fill this house with children who will play in the garden Sarah designed. Zara smiled. I want to grow old with you, watching the seasons change from our bedroom window. A foundation? Oh, did I forget to mention? I've been doing some research. There are so many families dealing with medical emergencies who can't afford treatment. I thought maybe we could help them the way you helped my grandmother. Adrian stared at her in amazement. You want to turn our story into something that helps other people? Our love story started with you saving someone I cared about. I can't think of a better way to honor that than by doing the same for other families. I love you, Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. I love your heart, your generosity, your courage to believe in happy endings. Even for broken people like us? Especially for broken people like us. They talked until late into the night, making plans and sharing dreams for the future they would build together. When they finally turned off the lights, Zara felt a deep contentment settle over her. A year ago, she had been a scared young woman facing an impossible choice. Now she was lying beside the man she loved, in a house that had become her home, planning a future filled with love and purpose and joy. The contract that had brought them together was long since torn up and forgotten. What they had now was so much better than any legal agreement. They had chosen each other freely, completely, with full knowledge of each other's flaws and fears and dreams. As she drifted off to sleep, Zara thought about her grandmother's words from so long ago. The rain won't hurt you. It's just water celebrating. Sometimes the storms of life brought destruction and heartbreak. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to dance in the rain, they brought new growth, fresh starts, and love beyond anything you had ever imagined. Outside their window, the garden slept peacefully under a canopy of stars, waiting for another spring, another season of blooming and beauty and new beginnings. And inside Stonehaven, two hearts that had been broken by loss had found their way to wholeness through love, proving that even the saddest stories could have the happiest endings. 2 years later, Zara stood in the same garden where she and Adrian had shared their first real conversation. But now she wasn't alone. Their 6-month-old daughter, Hope, gurgled happily in her arms while Adrian chased their 18-month-old son, Benjamin, around the fountain. Careful, Daddy, Zara called out, laughing as Ben squealed with delight. He's faster than he looks, Adrian panted, finally catching the toddler and spinning him around. The Adrian Stone Foundation had helped over 1,000 families in the past year, and their work continued to grow. The mansion was filled with life and laughter, exactly as it was meant to be. Do you ever miss the quiet? Adrian asked, settling beside her on their favorite bench. Never, Zara said, kissing Hope's tiny forehead. I like our beautiful chaos. Even when Ben decided to help you paint yesterday by adding his handprints to your canvas? Especially then. Sarah would have loved that, don't you think? She would have been right there with him, making handprints of her own. Adrian's voice was warm with memory and love. She would have loved you, Zara. And she would have been so happy that this house is full of children again. Above them, the key pendant that had never left Zara's neck caught the sunlight, sparkling with the promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. Their love story had begun with impossible choices and desperate measures. But it had bloomed into something beautiful and lasting, a testament to the power of second chances and the courage to believe in love, even after loss. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grew from the most broken ground. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, the person you were hired to heal ended up healing you right back. The end that. We'll figure it out together. That night, for the first time since she had arrived at Stonehaven, Zara felt truly at home. She wasn't there because of a contract or because of her resemblance to a ghost. She was there because Adrian Stone loved her for exactly who she was. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, Zara stood in what had once been Sarah and Emma's room, now transformed into a bright art studio with easels and canvases and paint-covered surfaces everywhere. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the half-finished painting she was working on, a garden scene inspired by the view from her bedroom window. How's it coming along? Adrian asked from the doorway. Zara turned to smile at him, paint smudged on her cheek. Slowly. I'm still learning. You're a natural, he said, moving to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Sarah would have loved this, you know. She always said this room had the best light in the house. Do you miss her? Zara asked, leaning back against his chest. Every day. But it's different now. I miss her the way you miss a beautiful song after it ends, not the way you miss something that was stolen from you. Adrian kissed the top of her head. I can love her memory and love you at the same time. My heart is big enough for both. I'm glad. I never wanted to erase her from your life. You didn't erase her. You helped me make peace with losing her. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the gardens where spring was beginning to show itself in small green shoots and early flowers. The estate felt different now, warmer, more alive, filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. Mrs. Patterson says the caterers will be here at 4, Zara said. Nervous about tonight? Tonight was the first dinner party Adrian had hosted since before Sarah's death. Just a small gathering: Mrs. Patterson and her husband, a few of Adrian's old colleagues and their wives, Margaret Holmes, who had become an unlikely friend. But it was a big step for someone who had lived in isolation for 3 years. A little, Adrian admitted. What if I've forgotten how to be around people? Then we'll figure it out together. Besides, you've been practicing with me for months. That's different. You're not people, you're… What? Home. The simple word made Zara's heart flutter. Home. Yes, that's exactly what they had become to each other. I have something for you, Adrian said, suddenly nervous. It's not my birthday. It doesn't have to be your birthday for me to want to give you something. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Zara's breath caught. Adrian. It's not what you think, he said quickly. I mean, someday I hope it will be, but this is something else. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant, a key made of white gold and tiny diamonds. It's beautiful, Zara whispered. It's the key to this house. To Stonehaven. I want you to have it, not because of any contract or obligation, but because this is your home now. For as long as you want it to be. Adrian? I know we've only been together for 6 months officially. I know you might want to see other places, do other things. But I want you to know that no matter where you go or what you decide, you'll always have a place here. Zara felt tears prick her eyes as he fastened the necklace around her neck. The key settled just above her heart, warm against her skin. I don't want to be anywhere else, she said. This is where I belong. Are you sure? You're young, you could travel, see the world. I could. And maybe someday we'll travel together. But Adrian, I've been searching my whole life for the place where I fit, where I'm truly wanted and needed and loved. I found it with you.